The past month or so has been pretty crazy. We've had obviously the aftermath of the U.S. presidential election, which we've now talked about extensively on this podcast, and the Trump administration approaching. There's constant drama about who he's going to pick for his cabinet. We got recently have this insane fight between the super racist Republicans and, of course, the also super racist Republicans who also want to let some people of color come in on certain visas when it benefits them financially, like, Elon Musk wanting to allow H-1B visas in because, that's how he can afford to maintain his business and pay people less money. Of course, also, you got the United Healthcare CEO assassination and everyone's immediate fascination with Luigi Mangione. I mean, that's kind of been the number one news story, I feel like, in most places. Of course, there's geopolitical turmoil across the world. I mean, there's really countless different things going on right now. But alongside all these big name stories, you have, one thing that maybe went under the radar a little bit, and it could permanently change the symbolism of one of America's biggest and, dare I say, best states, which is the Illinois flag. Potentially, we're going to get a new one. And at this point, there were 4,000 submissions to the Illinois Flag Commission, which opened them up earlier this year after our Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill to pursue potentially a new flag. And now it's been narrowed down to 10 submissions alongside 3 older flags. And the voting is going to happen in January. So I thought this would be a perfect time to break this all down. And before we get into the podcast, I wanted to let everybody know that we talk a little bit about the process of the voting. Most of the episodes talking about like the merits of the different flags and why we need a new flag. But we do talk a little bit about the process of the voting. And I did some more research after recording the episode. And just to clarify, the voting is going to be for Illinois residents only. And it kind of sounds like it's going to be a single one person, one vote, not a ranked choice voting or another style. But I'm not 100% sure about that still after doing a little more research. So just wanted to let everybody know that before they listen to it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you have your own hot takes about Illinois flags or flags in general, definitely let me know in, social media, comments on whatever you're watching this on, that kind of thing. And I hope you enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and roll the intro.
It therefore seems to me most important that you, the people of the state of Illinois, should know your university. Is it doing what you want it to do as the people's university? You are the owners, and your decision is final. Learning and labor. For the people and by the people. The People's University.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Learning and Labor podcast. My name is Niko. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about a very important topic near and dear to the heart of many of us who live in Illinois or have a connection to Illinois, and that is the state flag. To discuss this with me, I've brought a Illinois political correspondent here. Malachy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Malachy. I went to U of I with Niko. Currently, I'm working down in Springfield at the state capitol. The heart and soul of the political sphere of Illinois. I'm pretty interested in the design competition because I've been yelling and screaming for years that we need a new state flag. So I'm happy that it's finally come here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited myself. Like, there's been a long, kind of revival recently in the internet era of interest in flags, I feel like, or at least there's more coherent, online communities that exist around it. And I certainly at a young age was very fascinated by it myself. There was a brief period when I was 14 or something where I was like, I'm going to redesign my city flag, which I never ended up doing. I mean, I worked on it for a little bit, but I never ended up actually proposing it to anyone or anything like that. I still have time, I guess, but I was definitely into it from a young age. And I've definitely never been super happy with Illinois' flag. So it's very cool to see that there is discussion about changing it. There's some good options. There's some not as good options, in my opinion, but that's what we're here to break down today and look at what is actually on the table for a new flag for Illinois.
This may be broad saying, but culturally, the Illinois state flag, like a lot of state flags, especially the blue background state seal ones, they have no real cultural purchase. They just kind of occupy that space. You see them on your government buildings, and very little else, versus the states that actually do have like deeply memorable flags, or obviously cities like Chicago that have a ton of cultural purchase. I remember like thinking like, God, I wish there was like a jacket, because I had a friend in high school who always wore those like California jackets where they had the
Oh
state
yeah.
flag on the shoulder, and being like, why don't we have that? Just simply, we're a huge state. We play in that ballpark of states, but we've got basically just the Chicago flag. And if you're from anywhere downstate, you don't want to be wearing that all the time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Ohio actually has a pretty good flag. It's a kind of like one of those Texas style in the sense that it's like an interpretation of the American flag, basically, which it makes sense. A lot of state flags would do that. But I think Ohio's is actually a little bit more creative and unique, and unique shape and everything, which is nice. It's disappointing that my home state where I'm from, Illinois, does not have that nice of a flag. You're absolutely right that like, no, also like, I don't think anyone is really going out and, buying a little like Illinois trinket or something like that has the flag
Right.
on it. That's not even like an important piece of symbolism people connect with the state. They'll maybe, some of the things that are on the proposed flags are going to be like Lincoln, or even just like the icon for the state are more iconic symbols. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily the best symbol to put on a flag, which we could talk about, but there's a lot of iconic symbolism that is associated with the state of Illinois. The flag at the moment is not really a huge part of that, unfortunately, and I think it definitely has the opportunity to be part of that, and it's kind of like a net positive for everyone. There's not really any downside to having a good flag,
Absolutely.
other than the tiny amount of resources it takes in the short term to revitalize that. In the long term, it's not like a huge, absolutely worth it. I'm sure probably bring in more, just from a financial perspective, money in terms of like tourism or anything like that, and just culturally like a sense of civic pride, I guess, that is not currently being represented by the flag whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. What you said about like Lincoln being on the state flag, trying to think as an Illinoisan, what do we have totally across the state as like a rallying symbol? And it's like people in upstate, the Chicago flag, people in downstate, kind of just Lincoln. Like Lincoln's the one
Yeah.
that is like the uniting thing, which you can see on a lot of these designs. A lot of them have Lincoln in there, which I was happy to see. Very different ways they try to include Lincoln, which I think is really interesting. The idea of actually making like a state flag that is not just, I don't know, a placeholder and is truly memorable and appreciable. I'm very excited. I'm very happy that they actually did do this commission, because I thought that this was just not going to happen. I had a feeling that it was just this like little wave of optimism and like redesign that's going on for quite a few states. I thought we were just going to kind of skip out. We were just going to be like, no, because like New York seemingly has like no real energy to replace
Right.
theirs, and they're in kind of a similar position as us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was JB or a few folks in the General Assembly or who exactly was the person spearheading it, but it does seem like there was someone who took, or a group of people who took the political initiative to say, hey, we should actually do this. And obviously they opened it up to the public, which I think is the right approach, and allowed for these submissions to be considered, which I think is absolutely great. And to go back to what you're saying about Lincoln, I was just going to say, I feel like the Illinois license plate is honestly more iconic right now than the Illinois flag, which is kind of
Absolutely.
depressing. But also it's it has has Lincoln on it. It's like a, decent design. Like, I think that's kind of goes to show the need for a new flag, I think. And I guess that kind of brings up to the next point, is we should actually maybe talk a little bit about why the current flag is bad. Like, you might look at it and say, it's a flag, it's the state seal on a white thing, what is the reasons behind that? I mean, I think there's different ones you could point to. And this is a very old flag. It was adopted in 1915, and they added the word Illinois on it in 1969, which I think is kind of, I'm not against lettering on flag like in 100% of circumstances, but in this circumstance, it kind of just shows that like the flag wasn't identifiable beforehand, and so they just
Yeah,
added the word Illinois to make it more identifiable, but it didn't actually make it a better flag.
absolutely. You're absolutely right there, that it is literally just they came in, what is the only thing we need to add? Something that shows this is us. I think the
Yeah.
saving grace of the flag is that we have a pretty good state seal. Like, it's not too busy. Obviously, the eagle. I really actually like how they put in the state motto. I think that
Mhm.
that is my favorite part of the current flag. But I'll be honest, like the grass and then the river behind it, a lot of people have said like, oh, this looks like copy paste art, clip art,
Yeah.
and it does kind of look really basic the way they do it. And especially when you're staring at the flag. Like, I live in Springfield, so the state flag is all over the place. So I just have been seeing it. It's not very defining. It's you just kind of you can be like, okay, there's like the American flag. There's one of those POW MIA flags. They're very like I don't know noticeable. And then there's the state flag, and especially from distance. Distance is the main thing. It's up on a flagpole, even like a normal sized one. You can't make out much of it.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a good point to consider. And I think that's why a lot of, the so-called vexillology, flag enthusiast community online has, and, actual people who study design, more in a professional sense, kind of agreed upon at least a few principles that most, if not all, good flag designs have. And one of those is being clearly recognizable from a distance, because that's where you see a flag from. You're not, there's plenty of instances where you might see a flag up close, but when it's flying on the flagpole, you're not going to be right up there. And you want to be able to recognize the symbolism and the contents of the flag from that flagpole and from the distance that you might be. And I think that the current Illinois flag, I could tell it would be an Illinois flag, but most of the flag is just blank, empty space. And you could say the flag of Japan, or there are other flags that you could consider good flags that also have a lot of empty space, but they have either a simple design that is clearly recognizable and kind of iconic, or something else interesting going on. Whereas the Illinois, it doesn't really have a very captivating piece of art in the center of it. As much as I do agree with you that the seal is not it has some good qualities design wise as a seal, I don't think it does have that much synergy or many good qualities as a flag, unfortunately.
I was thinking about Virginia specifically. Virginia has almost as busy of a state flag or state symbol on a state background, but that one's very memorable because it's the Sic Semper Tyrannis. It's the figures in it are very detailed, but they're doing it, honestly not really. They're very simple figures of two men, one killing another one, a tyrant striking down a tyrant, and they're very simple. Versus the eagle on ours, that's the main drawing symbol, and it's got a lot of detail on it.
Yeah.
It's a weird juxtaposition of the empty space and then a lot going on in the middle. A lot of little details, the waves in the water, the grass, the feathers on the bird, it's weird.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Virginia one's an interesting example because it's another one of those seal on a blank or solid color. I do think it's maybe one of the better ways to do that though. And you're right. I think it's probably a better flag than Illinois because of that, because the seal stands out a lot more and you can kind of it has a simple level of iconography in the center there. The whole Sic Semper Tyrannis thing is a little bit weird to me just because I feel most famous because of John Wilkes Booth, but I don't know if that is, it looks like it was adopted before then, but then readopted after then. So I don't know exactly how to feel about all that, but it is still I agree. Just in terms of from a design perspective, I think a better way to do that seal design, and Illinois has not even done that. But there have historically been some other flags that are more official, which we should talk about a little bit before we get into the new designs. Both of which I think are, well, one of which I think is pretty good. One other one I am not as huge of a fan of, but the first one is the Centennial flag, which was created to commemorate 100 years of Illinois statehood. So actually, it's also a very old flag relative to a lot of these ones. And, the description that they have is that it consists of 10 stars on each side of a white and blue banner with a larger 21st star to represent the state being the 21st to be admitted to the Union, which is a common theme among a lot of these flags, is the whole 21st star thing.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty, I guess, normal thing to do for a state flag. I don't think it sometimes I honestly just don't think it leads to super captivating design. I think the Centennial flag is the exception where I think it works pretty well. And I like it, honestly. I also just if anyone's listening to this is just on the audio version, there is going to be a YouTube video version of this that will have all the flags we're talking about on the screen. And then you can also go in the link to the sources document. It will have the finalists and all of these flags linked there. So I definitely recommend looking at that while you're listening or at some point just to get a better visual idea, because we're not going to be able to perfectly describe everything, especially as we get into the new designs that are not going to be recognizable to folks. That's probably going to be useful. So what are your thoughts on the Centennial flag?
Honestly, I really like this flag. It's not my favorite, especially out of the actual options that we can vote on. But I had been saying before, I think the Centennial flag should kind of be the basis. And what I was going into, I had like a few ideas in my head based around like how to do it better. Basically, because I don't like the 10 stars on each side.
Yeah, I agree. That's it's a little too much, I think. A few too many stars that doesn't quite fit you can notice it and recognize it from a distance criteria very well.
Exactly. But I do like the idea of putting the 21 stars on it, just from a design standpoint, because it's really, it's simple and a lot of them do it easily, where you have 20 equal stars that you can divide up however you want, and then place them however you want, and then you have a single outlier that you can have fun with, which the Centennial is doing pretty much exactly that. So any of the, like, a derivative of this flag, that was my idea. That was like, that's probably what I'll vote for, and we have one, and I guess we can talk about that one later. But I really did like the Centennial, and I thought that this is a very good direction to go in, especially these colors, the dark blue and the white and white stars. I like that combo. I don't know why, but it screams of Illinois to me. Maybe it's reminding me of the like Wrigleyville flags.
I do agree. It feels right, and I think I think there's one or two flags that definitely are directly inspired by this, and then there's others that probably took some level of inspiration from the colors and other things. But I would be very happy if this was the Illinois flag. It would be a major upgrade. It could be better, but I think that like it would be a good choice. And yeah, I guess I might have to be a little bit more critical of the, like, as an idea, the whole 21st star thing works, but I think there's a few of these flags that I personally don't love how they do it, or I think it just looks a little bit like, and obviously a flag doesn't have to be literally symmetrical, but sometimes it can be like asymmetrical in a way that to me doesn't look good, which, maybe it's just a personal taste thing, but
right.
like I don't really like the sesquicentennial flag, which does do that. The star part is not actually the part I have the most issue with. If you're an audio listener, basically the flag is like a dark blue background. There is like a ring of stars in the center, and there's a big, white star, the 21st star to like the top right of the circle. And then in the center, in the middle of the ring, there's a big block eye, and then a red depiction of the state of Illinois, and kind of like not like an accurate depiction of the state of Illinois, but like kind of like a squiggly outline of it that's filled in with red. So it has a little bit too much going on in some ways that I don't love it that much, honestly.
Yeah, I think the red Illinois in the middle of it is so interesting. I don't know if I can say if I like it.
I don't like it. It looks kind of like the block eye has just like been stabbed and is bleeding or something. Like it doesn't like, I mean, I know that I instantly recognize it as the shape of Illinois, but at the same time, it doesn't like fit with the rest of the vibe of the flag, because the rest of it is like clean lines, a simple like flag or simple like star and like eye symbolism that is like very like clear and like cut. And then there's like this like weird jaggedy Illinois that is like also in the middle of the eye. Because like I feel like the eye could be like more impactful as a symbol if it was just there by itself and didn't have the red Illinois in it. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of this one, I'm going to be honest. And I feel like if they were to go with any of the three that have been like official flags before, the Centennial flag is above in a way the one I would prefer.
Agreed.
And I honestly don't know if the sesquicentennial flag would be an upgrade. I feel like it'd just be like a little bit of a, from my perspective, it would just be like a different way of being bad. Instead, like it's like someone trying to make a good flag but failing, instead of someone like just kind of slapping the seal on there and saying we're good. I don't know.
Right. To give this this flag a little bit of credit, I do like I was talking about with the stars, how it does it with the equal separation and then the spacing of the like italicized eye, I guess you could call it, and how that kind of equals out. I think that is cool and done well. The weird chewed up Illinois in the middle, maybe not so, and then the star off in just the corner. Interesting. I like how one of the new redesigns does where the star is in the corner in the very same way, kind of representing, I think, Chicago in that one, but it's still part of the circle. I think this has just that weird just not even fully in the corner, but just off to the side. I don't know if I like that, but I
Yeah,
do just like the star ring, the equalized, very symmetrical. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's like close at getting at like what could be a good design. I think that most of the designs are probably better than it, honestly. Even if some of them I still don't love as much, just because of the weird Illinois thing in the center. I think without that, it could be like kind of like decent, middle of the pack of these designs, probably,
Mhm.
or maybe a little bit on the lower end, but not like horrible or anything. But that definitely bothers me.
The Illinois Flag Commission has selected the top 10 finalists for the redesign contest. Public will get to vote on these. There are 10 designs that made the cut out of nearly 5,000 submissions.
I guess with that, we can kind of jump into the 10 finalists. I'm going to be like referring to them by their number, probably just because that's like the only title we have for them. And I'm just going to go like straight from the top to the bottom. So like the first one is
Okay.
4669, which also has a block I, but it's a little bit different of a block I. This one I feel very mixed about it. I kind of get the idea of the design, and I think it like honestly looks all right, but just some of the symbolism and backstory and just like what this would like actually be like in practice, I'm not sure if I totally vibe with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, should we read out the relationship to and the explains the meaning?
Yeah, I think we should at least read out bits of it if you want to talk a little bit about that and what it says,
Sure.
there for this one.
I can read it out. So relationship to Illinois. In the fall of 2004, I lived in Chicago and was studying industrial design at UIC. My great grandfather, Harry James McCartney, was an engraver in Chicago. He worked downtown at Sears, Roebuck and Co., and where he illustrated and engraved images of lamps, heaters, and other household accessories that were printed on pages of the Sears mail order catalog. His father
Love the
was
detail
James A.
there.
McCartney, right? A Civil War veteran from Illinois. He became the Illinois Attorney General from 1881 to 1885. And then explain the meaning. The 21 red plus white stripes represent Illinois as the 21st state of the Union. The blue field with a six-pointed white star represents Chicago. The negative space between the blue and the white fields form the shape of an eye to represent Illinois. Okay, so my first thoughts here. One, the first thing I thought when I saw this was if you put blue over the I and the white, it's the Minnesota state flag almost exactly. The brand new one, which I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
that's not a total discounting of it, but I think people are going to recognize it. The second part that I think is going to accidentally make people mad, or even intentionally, you got to, because it's a flag, it's a political symbol, it's going to be used in that way. The blue field with the six-pointed white star represents Chicago. It also takes up about 60% of the flag space.
Yeah.
People are going to get mad about that.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be very careful with the symbolism here. As someone who's from downstate, but also is not like, I don't like hate Chicago or something, like I know that there's obviously like that kind of, those kind of people out there. Yeah, but I don't have any like bad, I think all of the states should be represented. And obviously the majority of the people do live in Chicago, but I don't think we need to be like, Chicago is the main thing represented on the flag. We should try to find symbolism that encapsulates the whole state, and that can include representing Chicago in some way, definitely. But I agree with that part of your critique, because I don't, in terms of a symbolism perspective, like having like a huge portion of the flag just representing Chicago feels a little bit weird, especially when you don't have anything explicitly to represent the rest of the state. Like some of these flags have something for both intentionally, kind of.
Right. My second big problem with this one, which I do think it has some strong bits about it, especially the block I and the Chicago star, I think looks very good. Especially the block I. I really do like how they did it there, and I'm kind of sad that this is the only one that has it, because I think the idea of having it be like a pillar in the middle of the flag, I think that's a great design quality. I don't like that it's a little off center, but I think it's still, that part of the flag works. But my second big critique would be, imagine this waving in the wind, right? With the stripes at the end. I think it just would look odd,
I don't think the block guy would be as
unflattering.
recognizable in that situation, probably, also.
Yeah, you couldn't see the block eye. It would just be like white space in the middle, and you could barely see the the red stripes, and from a distance, again, it would just look like a weird version of the American flag. If you've ever seen that
Yeah.
one from the Revolutionary War where John Paul Jones like got it from the Netherlands, if you know that one I'm talking about, it kind of just looks like a variation on like, you explained the American flag to someone that never had seen it. And
Right.
then they tried to be like, okay, so it's got blue and it's got a star and it's got a lot of white and it's got some red and white stripes.
Yeah, it feels like this is like a kind of a vibe I'm getting, which is not necessarily related to anything the person intended, but also like I feel like you have a lot of like American flag adjacent like merchandise out there in the world, which
Yeah.
uh, for better or worse is usually mostly purchased and worn by people who are more conservative. I think is probably accurate to say. And so to me, this just kind of gives the vibe of like when I go down to like an area with a bunch of Trump flags and they have like some weird version of the American flag, maybe as a flag, maybe as some like some banner or something somewhere. Like this is like what I wouldn't be surprised to see that there. And I maybe I wouldn't know what it was, but like I know it means something. Now, obviously, if it was actually the state flag, that would be a little different. But like that's just like the energy it gave to me a little bit as like a
Right.
kind of like off-brand American flag. And I think that that kind of, besides the black eye part, which I do like as a concept, I feel like it could do more to like show it's Illinois. I actually thought at first that the red stripes were supposed to be in the shape of Illinois, and they, I guess, kind of are,
Yeah.
but not really. But then obviously you can't really do that and the black eye at the same time. So I don't know if that was all at all intentional. I think as a design, like it has certain strengths, but I still am not a huge fan overall. Also, I know the prompt like instructed people to tell their connection to Illinois, but saying like my family member was the attorney general just kind of feels like you're trying to get the nepotism higher, which I know is I don't like have any like ill will towards anyone because of that, but it was just kind of funny to read that. I'm like, oh, so like of course we're gonna take somebody who, has a this like family connection instead of just like what design is the best. Like I feel like that's like a narrative that like just popped into my head, even if I don't have that as like I don't like super seriously like care about that in terms of judging this. It could even be kind of like a cool thing if the design was really good, but I don't know. That's also just something that like just popped into my head reading this.
Yeah. The personal relationship part is good that they actually added that in because I think it adds to a lot of the flags and their meaning. It adds in a, I don't know, I kind of like the most, what you're saying, like traditional way, like Civil War veteran, Illinois
Yeah.
Attorney General, dad worked at Sears Roebuck. It's like, if those are like, he passed the Illinois test with flying colors,
Yeah.
Um, and I do appreciate that. Yeah, but I'll be honest, this is not in my top I guess 10 or whatever. I don't know if I'm ranking them like that. But I really like the block eye, but I think the red stripes just feel it's hard to do. Like the American flag is a very beautiful flag and looks really good, but adapting the red and white stripes to another flag is very difficult. And I don't know if this one
Definitely.
does it.
Definitely. I think Ohio and Texas are the only two I can think of that do it with some level of success. Texas is, I think, a little bit more boring. And
Yeah.
Ohio, like, got very creative with it, I think, in terms of like the shape and everything. So I think it is hard to do. And I don't think this does it perfectly. I think that maybe at the end we can kind of discuss like what our favorite or favorites are if we can't decide, and then who
Yeah.
we think might actually be the favorites to win the competition, which I think is maybe harder to predict. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this one. I feel like some of what I'm saying is literally just my gut instincts and not like a super coherent design critique. Some of it is obviously also about the design, but I feel like we're pretty in agreement vibes wise about like this flag had some good characteristics, but it didn't really nail the landing and is not a favorite for of mine. So I guess we
Yeah.
can go ahead and can move on to 4-3-2-1, which I honestly I like. I also feel similarly about in the sense that like I like the idea and the execution is like not bad. It isn't incredibly captivating to me as a design, I guess. I don't know what you think about this one.
So I'll be honest, this one is probably my maybe second or third favorite out of them. I'll
Hmm.
be honest, I'm definitely partial to this one for a couple of reasons. So First, a personal one of my grandmother loved the monarch butterflies. I've always loved that symbol. I kind of grew up around that symbol, like in my personal life. So just a personal, like, oh wow, I love that. It's on my flag immediately. Second, I think you probably share this one. I went to U of I. The blue and the orange
Right.
coloring, I am very much pro that being the colors of the state and kind of being official. Because, they're kind of the colors of the state as close as you can get. Because, like, if any cultural force can kind of define a state in America, it's football teams. And the two major football teams in Illinois are blue and orange, the Bears and the Illini.
That's a good point. Yeah, I've just thought about it from the U of I perspective, but the Bears also, that helps to bring in the Chicago folks as well. So
Exactly. And I think it's good. It's just a good color combo too, beyond anything
Yes.
else, beyond separated from sports or Illinois in general, just from a design thing, it looks good together. So this is one of, I guess, 4 or 5 flags, if we consider the 2 older ones that have been used before. I don't know how to describe it. The EU flag style.
yeah, the Ring of Stars situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something I have. Like, have a subconscious bias against it because it's already the EU flag, and that's like part of why I'm not like I agree with you completely. I mean, I don't have a personal connection to the monarch butterfly as much, but that is something I remember hearing about as a kid, and I think that would be really cool symbolism to have on the flag, honestly, and I
Absolutely.
like that. The Ring of Stars is, I think, more what I, from a design perspective, am not as big of a fan on, just because it feels like there are cooler or simpler ways to use stars. And also, I get the 21 stars thing. Illinois is the 21st state. That's cool, but I don't really care that much. That's not like as much of a meaningful symbol to me as like something representing like an actual characteristic of the state, if that makes sense. Like, the fact that it's the 21st state isn't like super meaningful to people who live in Illinois and going about their day-to-day lives. Now, the fact that, the state has a industrial and agricultural sector, or the fact that it has this history of Lincoln and the geography of the state, like, these are other things that are depicted in the symbolism of a lot of the flags. That to me is more meaningful than just the number it happened to be. So I'm not against the 21 part being included. I think it can be included in a cool way, but it doesn't as symbolism speak to me as much. Now, this flag does have a cool symbolism of the monarch butterfly, and they obviously talked about some symbolism with the colors, which is, kind of a subjective thing you can read into it. But I guess the Ring of Stars is really the only thing I don't like about it, just from a design perspective. Otherwise, I'm on board. And I think it's also cool that it's, high school students who made it. I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
wasn't it Alaska's flag was designed by a kid as well? Like, I think that's kind of like that's a fun story to have. And I think I think they did a good job for high school students designing a flag. It's very impressive to get this far in the competition.
Yeah, I'll be honest. A couple of the ones that are my favorites, I have a huge bias towards a kid made it. I don't know. Call me like a sucker for like civic stuff like that, where it's like, oh, like a group of high school students came together, or just some like 18-year-old or something. That gives this one a little bit more credence to me.
Yeah.
But I really do like the monarch butterfly. I think that's the thing that really separates this one from the other like circle star ones from me. Because it's a strong state symbol. It's one of my favorite of our like lesser known state symbols. And especially when it comes to like, chopping up like animal symbols for states. Obviously, we currently have the eagle, but that one's hard because everybody has the eagle.
Everybody wants the eagle. California has the bear. I think that
Exactly.
Wyoming,
Buffalo.
I would honestly, my hot take is that I would like the monarch to be bigger and like a more like the focus of it. I think that the stars around it, I mean, obviously like the monarch is like kind of the focus in the center, quite literally speaking, the center of the flag. But I think that a version of this flag, or a version of using the monarch, could work better with a like bigger depiction of the monarch, or maybe a more like abstract or dynamic depiction of it in some way. That would honestly like something I started to think about when I saw this flag.
Here's an idea. Take out the stars on this one, make the monarch a little bit bigger, and then put the white block eye from the first one on both ends of the monarch.
That would be cool. That would be
Right?
cool because the monarchs do have like patterns on their wings too, so that would actually work pretty well.
They should have put us on that commission. And,
yeah, I actually was going to submit a flag design, but then I missed the deadline. I didn't have I had like 5 things I was working on, none of which I felt like were finished. But seeing all these flags gives me a lot more ideas, honestly, and
yeah.
it's just kind of like just cool to think about more. And I think I also am realizing there's a lot of things I didn't even think about including in symbolism wise on my when I was just thinking about it for myself. Okay, so I guess we can go to 4220, which this one, I guess like I'll go over a little bit of the descriptor part first, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about the design as well. The person who submitted this was born and raised in Illinois, spent their childhood in central Illinois, worked in Bloomington Normal for close to 30 years, lots of family here, and they actually made this design in 2016, and they said it needs work. It lacks our current eagle, perhaps to be placed in a white silhouette above the star, which I think, I guess I do believe that like technically any of these designs could still be amended because the General Assembly has the authority to like do what they want with them. And these are just going to be submitted for public feedback. So there's nothing wrong with saying that in the submission. It is kind of funny to be like, yeah, this one's not perfect and then submit it. But I mean, that's an interesting point. I don't think it needs to have an eagle on it though. So I don't know if I agree with that, but
yeah, I hate to say it right off the top about this flag. I think this flag has a lot of merits, but this flag got immediately ruined to me when I showed it. This came out while I was at work, and we were all looking at the flags, which was an interesting conversation. But someone made the point immediately, this one looks like the MLB logo, like a lot.
Oh, you're right. It does look like that.
Yeah. Like, especially when you don't immediately, because obviously I've been looking at these a lot, and I can tell what it is, like, but in like, if you're from Illinois, you'd be able to tell that, and then Lincoln's silhouette. It's not as recognizable, especially to people outside the state. I do what you were saying about this person, like being honest about like it needs work, and especially later where it says this flag still lacks any representation of our Illinois week and Miami heritage, which should be added by their progeny. I think that's great that the person is outwardly saying like, I didn't know what to add for that. This is a work in progress, and I honestly don't know where to go with this flag to add that, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll be voting for this one, especially because it just looks like Lincoln's about to like kiss Quincy.
Yeah, I think, okay, we do also have to mention the fact that it says it's a nod to the French flag, which stood here, which, in my opinion, is not a good thing to be, like, a necessary thing to be including. Like, I feel like it's also a little weird to be like, I mean, I agree with you that it's good that they mentioned, like, the representing, like, indigenous heritage, like, on the flag somewhere. I do think that's something missing from a lot of these, or I think all of them, really. But it's also weird that on the other hand, saying like, oh, we also want to reference like a colonial power that previously controlled this area. It's like, we already have red, white, and blue as our national colors. We don't need to make anything an ode to France unless it's like much more culturally important, like maybe in like St. Louis or Louisiana or New Orleans or something. Like there, I did
right.
it.
Illinois doesn't have that.
Illinois doesn't need to do that. I prefer not to have that be represented in Illinois. Like the silhouette idea, like it's like a charming idea, and I think it would actually look all right as a flag waving, but it just looks like a little bit like messy when you don't totally recognize the silhouette. And like, I think that's like would be the case more as when it was like actually waving as a flag. And that's part of it that like, I know the Minnesota new flag, I believe has like something that like kind of looks like a abstract outline of the shape of the state. And I'm kind of like drawn to that idea. But on the other hand, you know, as a better way of representing the state geographically than like the just like pure like copy paste of the map. But on the other hand, I feel like part of the strength of symbolism is that you don't have to literally represent something. You don't have to have the outline of the shape. You can. So I don't like. I think that's the strongest possible flag wouldn't need to have a symbolic or literal like outline of the state, even if that could also be a cool design element. I thought about it myself before these came out too, but I don't know. I think like this flag is like I'm torn on it.
Well, I would say for this one is the best to put in comparison with the first one, 4669, especially with what you were saying just now about like depicting the state as it is. I didn't even notice what you said earlier about the 21 lines on that first one looking like the state. I think that's a much better way to represent it in that through rather than direct depiction, kind of reference to or like symbology of it, like on the Minnesota state flag. So I think that one does that job a little bit better than this one, and the others that just have the total outline of the state. Also because all of them are competing in the like depicting the state and especially depicting Lincoln, because a lot of them have the same ideas. I don't know about fully like whatever his profile on it.
Yeah.
Like Lincoln's profile is already on many, many things, especially in the state. So to just have it be like really the dominating image of this flag, because it's right in the middle and it's the one that's, especially if you're not from Illinois, it's the one that you notice at first. I don't know if that works really. I have one specific in mind, but I think there's a better way to include Abe on the flag.
I agree that I don't think this is the best way to do it. I need to say, even though it's like intending to literally like show the outline of the state, it does cut off part of southern Illinois, and I think parts of eastern
right.
Illinois as well. I don't know if where I'm from is cut off or if it's like right above the cutoff, but you know that's like a little bit like, okay, if you're going to be literally representing the state, you want to make sure you include every part of it, you know?
Right.
Like you don't want to. So, because like I was like double checking on a map, I'm like, yeah, that definitely like the bottom of Illinois is not flat. There, like it is on this flag. Like there's a different shape at the bottom, and this flag is cutting all that part off, which I get with the design constraints why that happens, but maybe that kind of just goes to show why you don't want to have such a literal representation of the state on there.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's one of those things where this is becoming a public symbol. This is becoming a political symbol and is being put to a democratic vote. Someone, especially people from Cairo, are going to be like, hey, wait a minute. Like,
we're not on this.
Yeah.
Their justification is it's Illinois' most iconic border formed by the mighty Mississippi. But the Mississippi does go further south. Still a little, it's weird.
Yeah. I like all of these ideas in principle, especially the showing of the state itself. Like, I think that is a cool idea. Illinois does have one of the cooler looking state boundaries. You know, we're not one of the just square states. We have that boundary that we can kind of lean into, but I don't know if it really actually works out in a practical 2-dimension way. I don't know if it actually works.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, imagine if we did something like Minnesota did, where they had the very similar thing, where it's a river-based border that looks interesting, and then they brought it down to basic geometric shapes. Imagine if it was like, well, we couldn't do the same, but like a straight down, it comes out and it has
I tried
Western
messing
Illinois.
with that when I was working on like thinking about designs myself, and that I think it could be done. It is harder than it might seem at first, but I think it could be done.
Yeah, exactly. I think it could be done also, even if it was like almost just a smaller version of Minnesota where it just came down partially from the top, meets in the middle, and then goes down sharper down to the bottom corner. Maybe that doesn't look very good. Maybe it's only looking good in my head right now. But I don't know. I think that could work.
Yeah, I definitely think so. But that isn't really where any of the other flags design they went to. There's a lot of the next ones that are very central. Like I think that 4669 and 4220. So the ones we've talked about outside of the butterfly one are the only other ones that don't have like some sort of like central focus in the center of the flag for the most part. There's a lot of the other ones do. And the first of those is like 4129. I actually like it a lot. I think it's like right on the border of being slightly too complicated, but I think that it lands on the right side of that. And I think that the symbolism is pretty solid. And I don't know, as someone with a gear in the logo of the graphic of the podcast, I like having a gear on there. And then they have which I didn't even realize when I first looked at it, the corn kernels, which are supposed to symbolize the agriculture. That idea appeals to me. This is like the whole learning and labor thing. That's like what I'm depicting in the podcast logo. That's like, connected to the university and the history of Illinois. And I think that's like a cool dual symbolism to have. And it also serves as a way of representing, I mean, obviously the industry in Illinois isn't just in Chicago, but it serves as a way of representing more urban areas and more rural areas at the same time as well.
Right. Yeah, it reaches across that downstate, upstate divide, the rural and urban one, which is like, I think, a definitive thing in the state that's, it's something that has to be, especially for a broad state symbol that has to represent everyone, it's got to be negotiated around. I really like 4129. Especially, okay, let me read out the description real quick because I kind of want to talk through some of them. The four dark blue bars in this submission represent the four geographic features that hold the greatest geographic, economic, and historic significance in the creation of Illinois. Lake Michigan, Mississippi River, the Ohio River, and the Chicago River/Illinois River system. Corn kernels and the 21-pronged gear that form our state flower, the violet, represent the agricultural and industrial foundations of our state, and its status as the 21st state admitted to the Union. Okay, so the rivers, Michigan, that part of it, I think is great. I think the idea of having these smaller lines bordered by a bigger blue line to represent either the Mississippi or Michigan, I think that's a great idea implicitly, and I think this flag does it in a pretty interesting way. I don't know if it's my favorite, but that's because I like kind of centerness. I like when there's like strong centerpieces, especially for like the background of a flag. But I do like how it does it, that kind of like mesh together. It's almost like hand in hand. I like that. Now the corn kernels and the gears, I think is very cool. I don't know if I love that symbol, but I've been thinking about this. It's funny because, okay, how do you depict that? I was thinking about other flags that have depicted it. And like you were talking about with the symbol of the podcast, right? It is kind of hard to depict that. And then I realized that this guy's also got to negotiate around another problem of most of the places that have depicted agricultural and urban in one thing. That's a very, like, it kind of, to most people, especially Americans, they're just going to be reminded of, like, I don't know, Eastern Bloc countries.
Yeah, the hammer and the sickle. That's what that represents.
No, exactly. And it's like, I remember thinking, because I said this when I first saw it, I was like, okay, imagine if it was like a corn kernel stalk and then a gear in the middle. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's like the Japanese Communist Party's logo. And then I kept thinking that, and it kept getting knocked down because I was like, okay, what about this? No, that's this leftist group's symbol. Or
I mean, to me, that puts it up in my rankings, but it does make the feasibility a little bit lower. That is true. So
I'm just saying, I get like that this guy probably was negotiating around that of like, okay, how do I represent both of those without making this look like I'm a Soviet partisan or something, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is difficult to negotiate that, and I think that, you know, I mean, the relationship to Illinois part is a pretty, you know, generic but also, you know, meaningful just connection of someone who's born and raised in Illinois and has been shaped by it, which I think is very cool. I think this is definitely one of my favorites. I think that one thing that I do like about it as well, beyond, I like the idea of the agriculture and industrial symbolism. I think that it also, like, the fact that it isn't just screaming that at you is kind of impressive. Like, it kind of looks like it's like a flower, or like you could very easily mistake it for something else, which I don't think is a bad thing at all, honestly. And I think that the water related symbolism, like, I think that's probably why so many flags are including blue. A big reason why is the importance of water and waterways and lakes and rivers to Illinois. I think this flag, I think when you look at it, it's probably the flag that most instantly, like, makes you think about water, just because there's multiple shades of blue. And I think that the lines and the stripes kind of work well to kind of bring out that symbolism in a strong way. And I think that's kind of cool because I think the geographic features of the state is a cool thing to include in symbolism. You know, when you're dealing with this politically, you want to be a politically all-encompassing vision of a flag. That's something that, like, everyone can kind of agree is an important part of the state because it's just literally what is in the state, like, you know, what has defined the state. And I think this flag does that well. And I also like the centeredness of it and just the symbolism. And I realize now that I mentioned the flower, it is supposed to be also a flower. It's supposed to be a violet. So that's very intentional that it has these different representations here. And I think it does it well, and I think it's like the best you could do with this intention of the design, and I really like it.
Yeah, I do like it too. The only cons I see in this flag is a little bit the colors, which is very personal. That's incredibly subjective, especially like the light blue. That's honestly just me. I'm sure it's like, I don't like it, someone else loves it, whatever. The only other one is the corn kernels and the violet specifically. So you've got the gear, and I think the gear has a good color, but then the corn kernels are dark blue to match the rest of the flag. I don't think that intentionally needs to match the rest of the flag. It could be like a bright, warm gold. I think that would more represent like corn and, richness of the state like another one does with gold. And then I think the actual biggest missing thing is the violet. That's a beautiful color. If you know what, like, the violet, our state flower, that like very vivid purple on it, that's, I think, a missed opportunity to have a really beautiful, really unique, especially color-wise, because I can't think of any states that have purple on their flag, and we just have that right in the middle of a symbol. I think that could have worked. I get why they went with blue, because, it's like simplicity. It looks good on a flag. It's a tried and true, where purple, especially violet, a little less so. But I think if it's supposed to be the violet, the state flower, go with the color too. Like, bring that along, and I think it would look fantastic, and also very natural, very beautiful color. It'd work well with, maybe then actually you don't put gold for the kernels, but you make the kernels white and then the flower violet. But I think those colors would all work together. But with how it is now, it's a little bit, it's not quite there for me.
I get what you're saying. I think that it's a bold, like, design, like, absent the colors, just like the structure of the design is like kind of a bold idea with like fitting so many different ideas together. And you could make that stand out more with some more vibrant colors. And I don't think it would look too messy or anything, just to add one more color on the flag. Or even just, you could just, if you wanted to, I mean, I like the light blue, but if you didn't like the light blue, you could rework it, definitely. And, I think that that's another way you could go about improving it. I would have to see what it would look like, but I still really like this one. But I get what you're saying. And I think that would be an interesting thing to see, is like a one with more bringing out the colorfulness of that. And also a lot of, like, violet's not a color that's on a lot of flags. That would be kind of a unique thing to have too.
Yeah.
By the rivers gently flowing, Illinois, Illinois. By the prairies verdant growing, Illinois, Illinois. Comes an echo on the breeze.
Next, we got another very central 3754. This one is kind of like, I don't even know what it reminds me of, but it feels familiar in some ways, which honestly I think is probably like unless it's ripping off something off that I don't know, is probably a good sign. This one, the person's relationship is they've lived here for 10 years and, they feel at home. They talk about the city and the countryside, being beautiful. And I feel like, as you mentioned earlier, it uses the gold star in the center to symbolize the richness in our state, and not just, in terms of money, but it says people, land, and views. And then, the blue and the dark blue and white that we're seeing on a lot of these flags, it is from the Centennial flag.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like this one a lot, honestly.
I do too.
It has a simplicity to it, but it has some intricacies to the design as well that I think work pretty well.
So I'll be completely honest. I think this is the one I'm going to be voting for. This is my current, like, reigning champ, I'd say, for a couple of reasons. Like I said before, the Centennial thing, that was, in my mind's eye, that's kind of the colors and the direction that I liked going, and this one definitely does, with the thick blue stripe in the middle and then the white on the top and bottom. Especially the horizontal blue line symbolizes Lake Michigan. I like that. And then the two smaller lines had a neat, elegant touch. Now, I think that, one, it does, fundamentally, that does add an elegant touch. But those could also just, it's a flag, we get to pick what they represent. Those could, just like the one before it, represent the smaller rivers, Kankakee, yes. Chicago, Illinois, Ohio River. We can, it's our flag, we can say, oh no, those actually do relate to those. But the thing that I really do like is the central circle abstractly represents the view from above Abraham Lincoln's hat.
That is pretty fun.
I think that's fantastic. And I think in the terms of how do we represent Abe Lincoln, that's my favorite, because his silhouette, everybody knows it's on the money, it's on the coins. But everyone does, what do you think of when you think of certain presidents? You think of, like, Washington, wooden teeth, Teddy Roosevelt, monocle, Lincoln, top hat. And the top hat is such a just fun graphic thing about him, right? Mm-hmm. This big cylinder on his head. So putting that in the flag and then having the view from the top of it, I just love that. I can imagine myself telling people that, like, you want to hear a fun fact about our flag? Or, classic Illinoisan, dude in a Bears jersey or something. Like, hey, you want to hear something cool about that? Why it's circled in the middle? Because it's that's the drawing thing about the flag. It's like, okay, why is there just this like empty orb essentially in the middle? Well,
Right.
it's for Abraham Lincoln's hat. Oh, that's really cool.
I think that is fun. I think I like this one a lot. I guess like I don't know what it is, but I feel like I think that the fact that there is that empty ring in the middle, like it maybe shouldn't bother me, but it just like graphically a little bit feels slightly like incomplete in that sense. I mean, the fact that the Lincoln hat thing helps, but I guess it's less about like from the symbolism, but just from a design standpoint. Sometimes that like I'm drawn to thinking like, why isn't there an outline for the full circle, or something like that. Like that's like just like something that my brain keeps like thinking about when I look at this flag. I mean, I still really like it. I don't know if it's like not a huge bad thing or anything, but I guess that's cool. And I feel like this is a very like it's a flag that I would be proud to have as a state flag, and I think it's pretty solid. I think it would look good flying.
Would you like it more if it was connected? Like, let's say draw the 6 lines fully together, have it connect fully into the circle. Do you think it'd look better without that?
The issue is then it would kind of look like there's an O in the middle of the flag.
Yeah.
And then I would be thinking about why is the letter O there, which obviously it's just a circle, but like I feel like that would be like maybe not. It would also maybe have other issues. So I don't know if this might be better than that, honestly. This might be a better option than that. But I still feel like I probably wouldn't vote for it, but it's like in my top like 3 probably.
I think the other thing that makes this flag for me, and I've been thinking about this with other ones, but I think this is the one that gets it closest. Well, a couple of the other ones do. Illinois has a ton of subdivisions of its government, right? I think more than any other state, and a bunch of different symbols. I think this one's the best one that could be cut up into smaller symbols, because a flag doesn't just sit on a flagpole. It becomes a lot of other things. It gets used in politics. It gets used in sports. It gets used for, county fairs, all of this stuff. And I think this one was very, at the same moment, recognizable and dividable, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Take out the little coin in the middle, and what you can use that for? You could use it as a coin. I could see tram tokens that look like the symbol in the middle in the city of Chicago. Take out the middle thing and you could put in a sports team logo, your school mascot logo, your local union logo, or anything. Mm-hmm. So I think I really do like that part of it. I think there's a level of, I guess, like reusability to this one.
Yeah.
And especially with the symbol in the middle. And also I think out of all of the we were talking about that downstate, upstate thing. Like, how do you represent all of the state? I like that the gold color symbolizes out the richness in our state, people, land, and views. I think that's a good way to do it. And then just one big Chicago-style star in the middle. I think that's a fair representation where it's not...
Mm-hmm. It's not showing just to one or the other. Yeah, I
exactly.
agree with you.
It's the recognizable Chicago star, but it means the whole state. It means our people. It means the land. It means the views. It's all of us. This one isn't just for, it's not like, here's Chicago, here's your part of the flag. It's, no, this is for everybody. But I really do think that it's the reusability of it, because I can imagine, anything in the middle of that. You can put the Cubs logo in there immediately, the Bears logo.
Right.
Anything.
No, I agree. I think that is actually a good point, and I hadn't thought about that before. I will say, unfortunately, the next flag does exactly what you mentioned, which is
absolutely
that's a star specifically to Chicago, and it's like, we got you, like Chicago represented, which is ironic because the person who made it is from Springfield, apparently. But
shout out.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I agree with you. 3754 is a very good one. The next one, 3679, I'm not a huge fan of. I guess we can just describe what it is to start with. It's just a ring of gold stars with one larger white star in the upper right, and then the inside of the ring of stars, there's this outline of Illinois, which symbolizes the pride we share for our state, according to the description. And then inside of the outline of Illinois, there's an outline of Abraham Lincoln, which symbolizes liberty, opportunity, and the equality of all people. So, first of all, having 2 outlines of Illinois and Lincoln, I mean, that was done on another flag, but they were not inside of each other. Which I think is a little bit weird. And then the white star symbolizing Chicago in the upper right is just like, why are we, Chicago isn't the capital of Illinois. There's no like official reason to be like, this is Chicago.
Right.
Like without doing, like, you can do that in a way that alludes to Chicago without just giving something just specifically for Chicago when like there isn't a reason to do that. I don't see a reason to do that. And I feel like it's odd, frankly.
Absolutely. I'll be honest, I don't like this one that much either. I think this may sound odd to say, but I like all of the ideas within it. But I think the way that they're put together, especially Lincoln within the state, like the profile of a profile, I don't know if I like that. I agree with you about the just one star for Chicago in the right corner. See, that, I think it being at the top right, I kind of like that idea. But then someone made a good point about this, that it looks like all of the other stars are then orbiting Chicago. Like they're not, because then they're all like off a little bit, and then Chicago's the only one that's right. And it's a little like, okay, again, it's like, do you make an effort to specifically represent a specific part of the state? Yes, the like leading and biggest and most well-known part of the state, but it's still unfair to everybody else to just be like, the definitive drawing thing about this flag is for a very specific part of the state. And again, I'm not jazzed about the idea of just putting the state itself on the flag. I don't know. Also, the last thing, I know I'm not, now I'm like, I don't know, giving more negative reasons. This one is the closest to, it looks like we've joined the EU.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does look like that. And it's also pretty similar to the sesquicentennial as well.
Yeah.
With instead of the no I in a Lincoln instead. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it for all the reasons you said. I get wanting to represent Chicago because it is true. It's the majority of people live in in Illinois, live in the Chicago metro area. It's incredibly important to the economy and politics and everything of Illinois. Like, I don't want to like undermine that. Like, I know that that's true. But at the same time, like, the whole point of a state flag is to be representing everyone. And I don't think this state does a good job of representing other parts of the state, because it says the gold represents our prairie and agricultural history. Dark blue represents our blue collar attitude, industrial power. But those are just colors. And I don't think colors as symbolism, except for if you're saying like something that's super obvious, like blue is like a waterway. It's something that it's cool to fun to read about after you've seen the flag, but it doesn't like help the flag become a better flag as itself. Like, you have to like read that to know what it means.
Exactly.
Which I think, and you might not know that the white star symbolizes Chicago, but you probably, that would be your guess if you saw the flag, right? Like,
yeah, that's
where Chicago is. So
yeah, that's the only thing that is like, I don't know, intuitive about it. You're right about like having to have it explained. Like, put it in comparison with the last one, with the Lincoln fact, which, you know, obviously I'm clearly biased, but that one is like, that's a fun fact to explain after to someone that's what's that odd design choice versus this is what the rest of the flag means. I need this like on a PDF explained to me. But then the Chicago part of it, that's the only thing that's like clear. You know, like, oh, that's clearly for Chicago because it's in the top right. It's right there next to it. That's for that.
Yeah,
I like the gold.
I think the gold looks decent. I don't know. Maybe you could come up with something better with a little bit of adjustment, but I'm not a huge fan of this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think a lot of good ideas, honestly, but not put in practice well.
Mm-hmm.
I think a better symbol in the middle. I don't know what that better symbol would be. Either just like a block white eye and then like aligned with the star. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe a top hat.
Right.
I don't know. The next one is like, these are probably the two most similar flags, I would say. 2752 is the next one because it also has a ring of circles. But then instead, there's like a silhouette of Illinois. So there's like a white circle and then dark blue Illinois in the center. And then there's two light blue edges, which I think we're supposed to represent Mississippi and Lake Michigan, which I think that's cool idea.
Yeah, especially the flanking of the state idea. I do like that implicitly. I like that that's represented.
in theory, I feel like I should like this one a lot, like more than the previous Illinois silhouette one. But for some reason, whenever I look at it, I just like can't get, it feels like it's stretched wide. I know
Yeah.
this is, and I don't know if it like actually is stretched wide or if it's just like I'm going insane, but that's like what I see whenever I look at this flag. I'm like, did they like stretch the JPEG of Illinois like a little bit too much? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. It does look like, I don't know, but you're right, like almost too big in comparison to the rest of, because it, okay, we have a lot of examples here of a circle of stars, and there's clearly kind of, I don't know if I agree with all of the like very Reddit vexology like rules
Right,
about
that
it.
can go too. That can certainly go too far. That can definitely go too far.
Exactly, or like the proper way to put a certain amount of stars in a circle.
Yeah.
There's clearly like some level of science there, or just design qualities that I think a lot of the other ones hit on. I think this one just like the stars are too big, and then the circle is like too bulbous.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think
again,
that,
I already said my piece about putting the full state on the flag.
yeah, in theory, this is like a good idea. Everything about it is in theory a good idea, but it just feels a little bit off as part of the execution, which is kind of how I felt when I was trying to design a flag. I'm like, I have all these good ideas, but then when I put it up there, it doesn't actually look good. It just feels a little bit off, and I can't like quite put my finger on it, but I think you're right that like certain things are a little bit too big and like the focus is a little bit like it just doesn't like catch your eye in the way you want it to. Maybe
Yeah.
as a flag that was flying, it would look fine. I'm not sure, but like I I don't love it for that reason. And I also just as a concept, I don't really need to see the silhouette of Illinois on there. I would
Yeah.
prefer to see something else. And
We have a chance to pick a new state symbol. Why would you default to just the outline of the state?
Yeah.
That seems kind of like a, I don't know, like the easy option here of just like, well,
Yeah.
just put the state on it. It's like, no, we have a chance. And I think a couple of these flags, like like my favorites are clearly that is picking the star, the gold star in the middle of a blue background, or the industrial kernel, or the monarch. I clearly like, okay, we have a chance of creating a big state symbol here. Let's not just make it the state. No one's gonna. I don't think that's gonna land at all.
Yeah. I also I have to give a shout out though. It does mention trains in the description, which I think is the only one to do that, because it says that the fact that it's a circle represents Illinois being the center of the country, which I don't know if I totally follow that logic, but basically they're saying that Chicago is specifically a hub for train and air traffic, which that's accurate. I think that would be something that would be cool to represent more in the flag. Honestly, if you had some sort of like railway symbolism, could do some cool things with that. But I also like, unfortunately, that's not like a huge part of the state in other ways. So like, I get why it's not on there. Even if I would love for the rail system to be more developed. So I have to shout that out, even if I don't think it really is clear from the flag that there's that symbolism was the meaning behind it. So
yeah, and again, you're right where it's like, I'm glad it's represented on this one and like definitively. But again, like a circle, I get the idea of like being the hub, so circle.
yeah.
But trains
You need some
and
spokes
rails,
then.
exactly,
Have a hub,
or even a crisscrossing design of some kind that like stretches across the flag.
Like a
itself.
railroad track, like crossing situation. Like there's multiple levels of symbolism there that I think you could do that would work well, but this doesn't quite get there. Yeah, okay. So the next one I have, the 2246. This one is like basically the farmer flag, and I actually really like the design.
Yeah.
From a symbolism perspective, I think you could maybe argue there should be other things represented than just agriculture, which I think is kind of just represents agriculture. You could argue that it just represents agriculture or like the plains, or the prairie. But I honestly, I really like the design on this one. This is like one of my favorites, even if you can make certain arguments about like it not representing certain things, I guess.
Yeah. I like this one too. I don't know, there is like something about it that holds it back for me, but there's a lot going for this one, especially the brightness of the colors, where the rest of these kind of take the traditional, like, I don't know, like governmental or like civic colors. This one really leans into other colors, which makes sense. If you read the description, he's a graphic designer, Bachelor of Arts in Graphic Design, which I remember when I first saw this flag, I was like, okay, this is the person that like, this is the one that's
knows how to design. Yeah.
He's the one that's on the Reddit vexology thing. This is the guy that was like, oh my God, finally. This has been sitting in a file for a couple of years, probably, which honestly a bonus towards it. I think the thing that I most like actually is the simplest part of it is the 3 stars representing the regions. I like that. I just like that implicitly going around the sun, like orbiting the sun a little bit. I like that. I think
that's something too where like you don't know that's the symbolism by looking at it, but when you look at it, you're like, hey, what do those 3 stars mean? And you're like, maybe I want to find out what they mean. And then once you do find out that they represent the different regions, I think it's more useful as symbolism because it's something that actually you're drawn to when looking at the flag rather than something that like, oh, there's a circle there. I didn't really think about that meaning anything in the first place. But this is something that like, even if it's not clear from the flag what it represents, there's a way of getting to that information and that meaning just by looking at the flag that I think is cool.
Also, it shows it's not Chicago and then the rest of us. It's 3 distinct things, which I think is good that it's not just like, again, it's not upstate, downstate. It is the actual regions because there is a definitive difference, even if they get kind of like forgotten in like whatever the politics or the like or urban rural divide, that there is differences between northern, central, and southern.
Yeah, I think if Southern Illinois were to ever secede from Illinois, they would pick this flag.
Right, yeah.
Because it like I think is really well designed and it represents like primarily like agricultural like elements of Illinois, and I think it does a very good job of that. The only like hesitation I have is just like there's no on the other side, like it's like the other side of the ones that make Chicago too big of a deal. This basically like it pretends like Chicago doesn't exist, like and as if we were making a flag of the rest of the state, which I do have to knock at some points for, you know, but I like the design a lot. And when I was first looking through those, I was like, wow, that's like pretty cool. And you know, thinking about it a little more, I have some other thoughts, but I ultimately like it from a design perspective a lot. Just maybe not quite the perfect fit for Illinois. Maybe, you know, this would be a good, I don't know if Champaign-Urbana, one of them have flags, but you could pick maybe like finding some town that needs a new flag. They could take this instead. That they would have a stick flag.
Honestly, I was thinking this one would be great if this one was like this one stuck around in like the pop cultural memory. Obviously, I have my bias for the specific one that I want to win, but I do like this one. Like, imagine just a bunch of I don't know small towns having it, or even like I don't know like. Imagine this on as like the cover to like a beer bottle or something.
Yeah, or it could be like, or like a government agency could say like, this is our flag. Like maybe there's like
the EPA or the agricultural.
The Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. This would be a good flag for them, or like something that has specifically to do with the environment or agriculture or something. You know, that would be a cool thing and a cool outcome of this. I agree. It would be cool. I like it. I think it's missing something to be like the Illinois flag from a symbolism perspective, but I do want to see it like live on because I like the design a lot.
Yeah, the thing that carries it for me is the stars, because it's not even just the 3 regions, but the 18 points representing the founding year. I like that. I'll be honest, I'm just drawn about the stripes, honestly. I don't know if I like the stripes. I truly can't decide, especially how they fold into each other. I don't know how well that would look if it's like actually waving in the
I like it,
but
I get where you're coming from. But I think that it would work. I think stripes are pretty common in flags. I get a little bit where you're coming from, because like if it was just like, it would probably also work if it was just like a straight green and white stripes across the bottom.
Yeah.
But then it might feel like it's a little bit like more like the American flag kind of. So I think it's good. Now that I'm like staring at it intently for several minutes in a row, I'm like, now it looks super weird. But it's like, okay, I need to like take a step back and like get, you know, I still think it looks really good. It's a little too agriculture pilled, but other than that, you know, it's a good flag.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next one is kind of like the most amusing one to me in some ways, 896, because they literally just took the state current flag and slapped a red and blue vertical bar on each end.
And took out the
Uh,
Illinois.
and took out the word Illinois. And like I actually do think it's a pretty major upgrade, surprisingly. Like I was like surprised at how much of an upgrade I felt like it was from the current flag. I would still definitely not vote for it, but like that's out there now, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah, I don't like this one because I have the problems with the seal. Like what I had said
The
earlier
seal is
about,
still
like,
there, and it still is not great. Yeah.
exactly, and it's all the problem is not. I think this would have been really interesting if it was this implicit design, right? The red borders, small white one, and then blue, and then a reimagined version of the seal, or
Definitely.
like I don't know, take the state symbol and put it below the shield, and then add maybe like the stars on the shield instead of just the American shield, or something like that. Which maybe just like that's too much to do for like a like just a random person to do, but maybe like a design
Yeah.
committee could kind of be like, okay, we still got the problem of a really busy state seal on this. And again, how many opportunities are we going to get to truly redesign our state flag? I think it's kind of just, I don't know. If you're going to pick a new flag, don't just pick slightly different.
Don't
Be
just pick a
radical
slightly
with it.
better version of the current one, which I
Yeah.
would say that's how I would describe this.
Yeah.
And I mean, they do admit that it's not very imaginative, but practical and economic, which I don't think
I don't know that because we'd have to
I don't think
print
there's
all new
any,
ones anyway.
I don't think it would save any money if you picked this as the new flag instead of like, unless they're thinking about like the ink cost of printing flags, which
Yeah, I guess
I think is
sure.
less of a concern in the 21st century than it was, back in the day.
It's also
I don't
thinking about
think it's a big deal.
the if we have an actual new state symbol again, like my whole thing is like popularizing a new state symbol. That's why I like the monarch
Yeah.
one and the gold star on the Lincoln hat one. That's why I like those, because those are new state symbols that can kind of compete with the best of them. This
Mhm.
doesn't. And then the same
Yeah.
thing of like saving money. I think you're right. Like we would have to replace all of the government flags anyway. And then I don't think too many people own Illinois state flags themselves. So I
Yeah.
don't know about that.
I mean, I'm planning on getting one if we get a new flag, but I currently
too.
do not. Yeah. So I also no hate to this person, or their late
or
wife,
any of them.
but they didn't really have anything written in their own relationship to Illinois. It's even unclear to me if they ever lived in Illinois or just their wife did, which like is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also am just like, that would be interesting that's like one thing that's like in the description of it is a little bit lacking.
I get that it's lacking. I do like that one. Again, call me a sucker for like very basic civic
it is
stuff.
a sentimental, I guess, story.
Yeah,
too.
this is
I get
this is dedicated to my wife.
Right.
In the same way that I like the sentimental ones of the made by teenagers or young kids, like the high schooler one, or mine, the what's the number of it?
3754. Wait, that
Oh no,
was,
I was actually thinking about the last one. We haven't
the
talked
last
about
one.
the
We'll
last
get
one.
to. Yeah, 200 is made by an 18-year-old. So that's
exactly. Cool. I don't know. Call me a sucker for that stuff, but I like those a little bit more than like what you're talking about with the first one, where it's like, oh, my Civil War vet, Illinois Attorney General, or even the one we were just talking about, the graphic designer. Like a little bit less of a here's my resume for why I should be the one that gets to make the state flag, and just like I'm a person. I live in Illinois. My wife was from Illinois. I don't know. I like those a little bit more. Just the normal connections. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I agree. I think this isn't a good flag. I think 896 is not a good flag in terms of just creating a new symbol for Illinois, which is kind of what we talked about in the beginning, is the whole point of this. The only reason I sounded slightly positive about it is that, like, I think I was surprised at how much better I think it looks as a flag compared to the original one, but that really just shows how bad the current flag is, rather than this one being like a design we should pick, because I don't think anyone should vote for this one, just because I think we need a new flag.
I think a lot of people are going to vote for this one, actually.
Yeah, I might. We can get to that too, but I think it might have a chance of winning because of that, but we'll see. Okay, so the last Flag 200, we alluded to the fact that it's made by an 18-year-old and we might like it. I think it's pretty decent. We need to address the elephant in the room, I think, which is that everyone is comparing it to the North Korean flag. That you could call this the Democratic People's Republic of Illinois flag.
Right.
But which I doesn't really, I mean, it's a flag with a star that's slightly left of center, I guess, and has stripes, I guess. I honestly think the North Korean flag is better designed than this flag, is my hot take. But I also, as a flag of Illinois, I think this is still pretty decent. It's not, I think it's pretty solid. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed. It is funny, though, it is the one that pops out. Actually, this was my favorite starting off, again, because I had started from any variation on the Centennial.
Yes, this is the one that's, I think, the most similar to the Centennial, which also has a star to the left, although it's all the way to the left, whereas this one's just a little bit to the left, a la North Korea.
I do think it is really funny that this one probably will not win just for that.
I don't know who's going to be voting on this, because I know it's like an online vote, right? So I don't know how that's all going to work. But I don't know how many people voting will know what North Korea's flag looks like. So I don't know if that's going to be a big factor. But who knows? I feel like there's a lot that's like very hard to predict.
Yeah. Wait, that's a good question. Do you get to vote on the state flag?
I don't know. I don't live in Illinois anymore, but I would like to vote. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm very confused by how that's supposed to work. And it is a little bit worrying that it will not be a very democratic process, because it's maybe I misread that it's an online vote, but I'm pretty sure that's what they said. I'm going to see if I can find it on the Secretary of State website.
I'm almost sure it is. But yeah, that is odd, especially because we just had like an election. Like, I get like the timing's not coming up, but I think it would be fine to let this wait until the next round of like elections, so it's actually on the ballot. But I'm guessing, actually, honestly, that's probably where a level of like financial thinking started coming into it, where someone was like, well, we should put it on a ballot. Do you know how much money it costs to print ballots with colored flags on it?
Vote in January. So yeah, I don't know. And then in April, the findings will be reported to the General Assembly. So we have some time to wait before any of this happens.
And again, it's always up to the General Assembly. We'll have to see. I think that'll
unless
be
they put a referendum on the ballot at some point, it will be decided by the state legislature, which I think is, that's fine with me. I think that they're trying to do some democratic consultation here, which is good.
Yeah, I'm happy that it. Honestly, I'm. This may sound almost like anti-democratic, but I'm happy that it is not just an online poll defines what the state
that
flag
just decided
is.
it. That would be worrisome, considering the history of that. So getting back to Flag 200, this is one made by 18-year-olds whose parents were born and raised in Illinois, and they were born and raised in Illinois. That's cool. The symbolism that is described in the description is about like the white and blue stripes, the big strike for Lake Michigan, and the smaller ones for Mississippi and Illinois rivers, which I think is a kind of theme in the symbolism we've seen, which I think it works. In the blue, like I said, is good at invoking the waterways. And then you have the 21 stars with a big, or the 20 stars with a big 21st star in the center, which I think is among the best ways to do that 21st star thing, in my opinion. And then they say the white stripes represent the state's industry and commerce. I don't think that's as stronger. And the bigger stripes represent the state's agriculture. That's not something you really would ever know by looking at the flag, but those are good thoughts, I think.
Yeah, especially because it just looks nice. Like the way the bordering works, I like that. And especially also, honestly, like the spacing out of it, where the thinner white line represents the industry, but are kind of closer, and then the borders represent the agriculture. I don't know why, but when I read that out, I was like, that makes sense. That's a good, chopping up of kind of industry agriculture onto the flag itself.
Yes, I agree. I think it's pretty solid. The North Korea thing is silly. I don't think it's really that like the thing is, so many flags look similar to each other. Like, no, it's not like you need to kind of like take that to the side at some point if you're going to try to like seriously analyze flag design. Yeah. Okay, Germany and France and Belgium need to all change their flags now because they're too similar. Like, I I get why people are joking about that. I do think it's pretty funny, but I don't think it's like something serious we should consider too much when looking at this flag. And I don't think voters will probably be considering it too much.
Yeah.
I think this one is a good. I think it's like on par with me for the centennial flag. I'm not 100% sure. Like part of my voting decision might be like a strategic voting decision as well. And so I might vote for the centennial one, to be honest, but I'm considering that. But I do think this is a really good flag. I'm impressed. And it's definitely my top few.
Yeah, this one's definitely in I would say my top three, actually. I really do like this one. It is a shame that if it does get sunk by anything, it's just that it looks like the North Korean flag, which sure is a count against it, but also in the same moment, talking about flag design, kind of account for it because it shows that flag works, is memorable, and like, sure, you could say like, oh, that flag is memorable because it's a really evil state. Sure, but like, I don't know how many people remember, like, I don't know, the flags of a number of authoritarian states. Like, I think it North Korea clearly has like a memorable and well-designed flag that like, no matter what the state is, you can give them credit of like, hey, that is a nice flag. Sure, maybe we shouldn't. That's the thing. It's not a copy. It's just, like you said, it's sadly reminiscent of it. And I think another part of where that is coming from, honestly, is like people anticipating critique a little bit. Like I was saying with those first two, how they look like the Minnesota state flag. What has people been saying about the Minnesota state flag? That it looks like the Somalian flag, and then like a bunch of racist comments about that because of the Somali immigrants there. I think the same thing's going to happen here, where let's say this one wins. I know the first comment,
Republicans will be saying that the woke Illinois is embracing Juche or whatever. And, you know, I would feel bad for the 18-year-old, unless they are a fan of Juche, which is something that some 18-year-olds do believe. So I like the flag. I'm probably not going to vote for it, but it's like in the top few for me as well.
Yeah, I really do implicitly like the design. There's something very civic about it. The use of the colors. And again, I totally agree with I think this is the best use of the 21 star, like in a circle thing. This one gets it right.
So make your voice heard and select the flag you think best embodies and celebrates our great state. And remember, you can always stick with the current one.
Yes, I hope they do some sort of ranked choice voting. Honestly, I'm not sure if they've like said how they're going to do the voting because it's hard. There's so many options that like just voting for one doesn't feel good. Maybe you could like they let you vote for a few of them. I don't know. But I think this one's very similar to 3754 in terms of like what it has going for it in the design. And I think honestly, I mean, maybe not as much as that one. You could use the like 1 star surrounded by 20 stars as like a piece of iconography in and of itself, and not, you know, in a context outside of the flag, or put something else in the center of the big star the way you would with that one, the way you've described it. So I think it has, it's very similar. Those are the two most similar ones probably, other than just like the one that looks like the current flag.
Because they're both the centennial inspired, and with a star as the defining image. They have the different things.
And I would prefer both of those over the centennial because I think it helps us we're moving past the centennial, but we're still inspired by it because it's a good flag, rather than just doing the centennial flag, which I wouldn't be that mad about. But it's like I would prefer to move past it if we can. I will only be voting for the centennial flag. I might vote for the centennial flag if it's like you only get one vote situation, because I anticipate that the centennial flag might be pretty popular, and I would prefer it to win over like the current flag or something like that. So I don't know. I guess like to kind of like transition into that section of like, I'm very uncertain what's going to happen in this vote because I'm not sure how it's going to work, who's going to actually vote, and what, you know, reasons they're going to have for it. My instinct is that the centennial flag has a pretty good chance of winning. And honestly, just because it has that institutional legitimacy, the current flag or the one that's like a slight deviation have a decent chance, unfortunately. Especially if it's like a first past the post situation. Which I don't know if it will be. Just because like it's like okay, you have the current flag, which maybe only 20% of people like it, but then you have, 12 other options that people are calling to split their votes between. That's why a lot of times the original flags don't get updated. I think that's what happened in New Zealand when they voted on it, is the original flag ended up winning after they, narrowed down a bunch of other options, and then people voted for the original flag anyway, which may be frustrating, but it's also like, okay, if the process is designed in such a way where it's not just like an open question of like, how do we reimagine the flag, but it's explicitly positioning the current flag against the new ones or new ones in the plural, then the original has a chance of staying just because of its legitimacy and familiarity to people, even if it's not a very well-designed flag.
And then just people, especially thinking that it is going to go back to the General Assembly. I should know this, but like, I don't know what the disagreement about coming and making a new flag was. Because you're right, like, it broader voting wise, that'll be represented in the vote. Maybe it gets split kind of like where, let's say, the traditional vote, right, that they want to just keep the same flag. The traditional vote gets split between 896, the changed flag, and the normal one as it is, and then everybody else gets kind of scattered to the wind to all of their individuals, right? And there's not like a defining leader. And then hopefully, you're right, that there is like a ranked choice voting way. That would be great if they did that one, because I think then we'd get an actually popular new design. But let's say they all go back, maybe like the top 3 or 4. That's basically just like a poll that the legislators use to look at. It's going to probably just represent it in like whatever legislators were like, no, that's stupid, let's not get a new flag. They're going to look at it and be like, hey, 20% or 30% of the state voted for the old flag. And then also this one with like limited redesign changes. Let's just do that. That's the easiest. That's going to make very few people mad. And the people who want a new flag, well, we got a new flag. And the people who don't want a new flag basically kept the old one. Compromise moving forward. But then we're stuck with the same flag. Then it's whatever. It's like a wasted effort a little bit. I think you're right about the centennial flag, that it will be one of the leaders, but let's call it the kind of the Biden flag of this, that it'll have that like that 10% block.
So in this analogy, people. Trump is the current flag, and
I guess
Biden is the leader of the opposition. Okay,
right.
I get what you're saying. So I guess maybe I'm voting for Biden. I don't know. I never thought I would say it, but I don't know. That is a good. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it really just depends on the format of the voting. And hey, I might not even get a vote because I don't live in Illinois right now, so maybe I shouldn't stress about it too much. But I am very excited for this process and what it will bring. And hopefully we do get a cool new state symbol that's not just the seal on a white background, but we have to wait until April 1st, which is now I'm like, it's going to be on April Fool's Day, really. But that's apparently the date that the General Assembly will at least begin considering a new one. So
I don't think I don't think that it's going to happen in a day, unless it is like really defining, like 50% of the online vote is just like to one of them, unless one of these, be it one of the old one, the centennial, or one of the new ones, just has a total majority. I don't think it's going to be a simple walk through the door process in the General Assembly.
Yeah. I think, which is another reason why the issue with ranked choice voting is that might not necessarily help. It would help you and I know how to vote better, but I think it wouldn't necessarily weaken the original's chances.
No, which that's not even my main goal. Like, obviously I want a new flag. I would be one of the people that would be like, I don't like the new flag, we need to replace it. I'm vocal about that, I guess. But if the majority of the people of Illinois do want to keep it, fine. I will buy my personal own printed copy of 3754 or something and keep that to myself. And just be like a weird like sectarian about it.
I mean, that's like that's fair. I mean, flags are whatever you see in them, so if we don't see what we like, we can, do our own thing. Yeah, I'm uncertain about how it's going to go. It's in January sometime. Who knows when in January? I'll be sure to, I'll try to keep people updated on the Learning and Labor social media if I see any news. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, is there any other like wrapping up thoughts you have about these flags and where things are headed for Illinois here?
The last thing, especially since we're talking about like I guess the actual politics of it, there seems to be really nothing. There's very few people who seemingly deeply care about this, mostly weirdos with podcasts like us and on Twitter.
Yeah.
The only two things of note I think about this thing is I don't think this is at all related to it, but did you see that the Secretary of State was wearing a pretty nice hoodie of the current Illinois flag, but on a blue background? It's a nice hoodie, actually. I would buy buy a version of it.
Right.
But someone at my work was joking that like I wonder if that's him showing his, like support, like keep with the old. Probably not. It's probably just a nice hoodie that he was given. It does,
Also,
it
isn't
does,
that just be the seal on a hoodie? Is
yeah,
that not, it's not really even, it might not even be about the flag.
especially because it's a dark blue hoodie,
Yeah.
so probably not. But that's like the old. What I'm saying there is basically like there is really no disagreement. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like Pritzker got up and was like, "I love this one," and then like Johnson got up in Chicago and was like, "If you're a true Chicagoan, you vote for this." Like that's not happening. Um,
Yeah. So we got to
and
take a stand, which is to say that if you're a true learning and labor patriot, you have to not make sure to vote, stay in line
yeah,
and vote
Sand lines.
for either the centennial flag, I would say, like, or 200, 3754, 4129, probably like the handful of ones we've talked good about. I mean, just please vote for one other than the current flag or 896,
Yes.
and hopefully we'll get across the finish line. And I may advocate for strategic voting if it comes down to it, but we'll have to see. Maybe we'll get some high quality polling out there.
Yeah.
I'm confident that will not happen, but I would definitely encourage people to do that because it's kind of while you say like I agree with you, the politics of it are like not really there. There's not like a lot of political dispute. It also is something that I think would just kind of be a W across the board if it was like a cool new flag and like only some weird losers would be getting mad at it, like they are with the Minnesota flag. It
Yeah.
seems like
Exactly.
kind of just a net win, I think, if we get a cool new flag, and I hope that they do decide to do it. The also like other funny potential outcome is that like the General Assembly just doesn't do whatever the votes say, or they
Yeah.
like I mean because it's gonna be hard because like if it's like current flag 20% and then like a few others get like 13% or something, it's like okay, what do they do then? Like what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like that's hard for it to interpret. So they could kind of just say most people didn't vote for the current flag. Let's go for the favorite of the rest. Or maybe they'll even bring it back to another public vote, if they narrow it down to a few of them. I don't know what will happen, but that's something that's what I've been thinking about. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because this was a committee. I'm kind of surprised, and I wonder if they're kind of waiting for this, like if they have this in their pocket of when it comes back to them, of making an actual design by committee, which I know that is often a negative, but I think would be interesting to see, like, okay, here's what the people think about all of these basic flag designs. Let's interpret and go forward with some of these. Like we've talked about, like the design choices on a number of these. I would find it very interesting to have like the actual representatives of some of these places, and especially I don't know if there are any actual flag experts that they could like bring in or like talk about, but actually
or just
sit down.
design professionals.
Exactly. Or just people like I'm sure whatever, there's a bunch of states that just did this. Like call up someone from Minnesota who led the design commission there,
Right.
and there's someone in Missouri and stuff, and just bring them over and be like, okay, like what did you guys do? Like what's find the places where they've had the most success, like Utah, and like bring them over here and be like,
Utah's is a very good flag now.
this is a fantastic one. I think I have seen no one complain about that flag on any part of the internet, which is impossible nowadays. So
Yeah.
whatever they did, we should probably like just give them a quick call and be like, hey,
Yeah. Maybe I mean, I'm sure they probably are. I think in Minnesota there was some revision to whatever the winning flag was from the public vote. I believe there was some modifications or simplification of it,
Okay.
which could very well happen if one of these designs is a front runner. They maybe will modify it a little bit, which, yeah, I think is an interesting possibility. And I don't know who's on the flag commission and who exactly. My guess is it's, probably what you described, some combination of political representatives, experts, that kind of thing. And we'll see what they cook up.
If you were a true Illinois patriot, like myself, I say vote 3754 or 4321. Those are the two that I know I will be thinking about. I'm pretty sure I'll be voting for one of them. I'm definitely going to be voting for one of the two of them. I could change my mind. Right. They're about equal in my head. But if it's either of those two, I'll be a happy man.
Yeah, I'm just to lock in my top two. I'm probably going to say 4129. And I think you've convinced me 3754 as well as my top two at the moment. And that could change. And the Centennial flag is also, like I said, in my head, potentially a strategic vote as well. But that's how I'm feeling. And I think with that is a pretty good place to wrap things up. So yeah, thank you for coming on the podcast. I think we've had a lot of intense discussion here about this important political perhaps the most important election of our lifetimes coming up here. So appreciate you joining me, and everyone listening. Make sure to get out that vote come January.
Yep, stay in line. Stay in line but have that website open on your computer for years.
Vote as many times as you can.
Yeah,
early and often.
You know what? I think it's time to start investing in bot farms or whatever those things that they've used to ruin these online elections before. If anyone has access to any of those, I'm not saying anything.
Hit us up so we can report them, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we don't want to do any of that, no.
Yeah.
Learning and labor. Station WILL has carried a special program this week giving information about the University of Illinois. If you have been a listener to these broadcasts, you have heard more or less about what the university does, how it does it, and what it hopes to do. Thank you, Dr. Willard.